everybody. Welcome to Exceed Network's Boardroom series. I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of new ones, so welcome to the new ones, welcome to the old ones. We've been doing this for about 6 months now. We try to target areas in business that absolutely intrigue all entrepreneurs. We've done marketing, branding, selling yourself, packaging, a lot of different programs over the last 6 months. I would like to ask all of you if there's any recommendations you have for future events. Please see myself or Dan or Emily or her, part of the staff that we're here tonight. A little bit about Exceed Network for the newcomers. We're a nonprofit business advisory, advising companies in startup, growth, and crisis over the last decade. All our services are totally free, chesed driven. We have a great captains of industry on call to help with the Dynamite board, which a couple of board members here tonight. Our Chandler, Rafi, Chemtob, gracing our great venue tonight. Tonight's event is something that a lot of people have asked us about over the last couple of months. It's called wholesale to retail. So basically the dynamics of the wholesale business to the brick and mortar world and taking it to an online presence. So we're very pleased to have with us tonight someone who has been involved with our organization over the last decade. He's a board member and he handles basically the tech unit of Exceed Network. He comes with incredible resume and a lot of time. He gives the organization. Without further ado, Rafi Chemtob.
So we're going to talk about taking a business online from a wholesale perspective. Obviously, if you're in a retail business, taking yourself online is a lot easier, but it's much more complicated when you're dealing with a wholesale company because the volumes are different, the setup is different, the infrastructure is different, everything is really different. And really what's most important is the mindset is different. And this is where I'm going to be concentrating a lot of my content on tonight. So let's define the problem. This is what I hear from a lot of potential clients that I go see in the wholesale industry that want to take their business to retail is that the problem is that the industry, their industry, or pretty much any industry, is moving digital. Where it used to be how consumers would just walk into a store, depending on the product line, either they go to the shop for the product, or it's kind of like a, by the way it's merchandised in the store, they pick up the product and they buy it, right? So as a whole, everything is going digital. And because everything is going digital, they're challenged with a lot of different variables in their business where, because it's digital, this is one aspect of it. Because of consolidation, this is another aspect of it. And they kind of see that they have to be able to go directly to the consumer. And that's kind of where the market's going. So we see the problem is, do you see your industry as going digital in a fast pace? And it's really not that fast, but it's fast to what we're used to. And then the second challenge that they're having is they don't really know how to get online. They don't know how to take their business online because it's more than just popping up a website and putting a product on it. There's a lot more back office and back infrastructure that you need to have. So we're going to be discussing tonight a lot of different things about the how, the why, the what, the where, when, all of this information. And this is kind of like the 30-year view of this thing. 80s and 90s, in the early 90s I was in wholesale, I was working with Michael Farka for about 6 months. There were a lot of companies to go after, right? I was selling children's wear, I was really new, I didn't really know what I was doing, but the company, you could go after like 300 big, you could go after tremendously large retailers. And over time, they just started consolidating. And one bought the other, one went out of business, and Sears, on the verge, and this is common business, right? And the number of these large retailers that you're normally selling to are just dwindling down. for a bunch of reasons. Number one, they're buying each other out. And number two, they're just not competing digitally, or they can't compete digitally. And Amazon's come swallowing them up. So the topics we're going to be discussing tonight is what's really defined as going online or going to retail. Because there are a lot of misconceptions of that. And again, we're going to be discussing the who, the what, the where, the when, the how, a lot of this stuff. But before we do that, I want to take a poll. How many people here sell online right now? How many of you define selling online as selling on Amazon? So, I want to, as selling on Amazon, there are two different types of sellers, right? There's something called a 1P seller and something called a 3P seller, right? And the difference is, a 1P is kind of just another wholesale account, just another account that you sell to and they kind of do everything for you, or you do everything, but you're getting paid a wholesale price for the product. And the 3P is, you're getting the retail price of the product. But that's not really what I want to find out. How many people here sell directly on their own branded website? Okay, great. That's a good number. So before we start with this, I want to define how many people think that selling online, well, you had this question. So how many people define as Amazon being the solution to selling online here? Great. Nobody. This is great, right? Because selling on Amazon is, selling on Amazon is not really selling online. It's just selling on Amazon. Amazon is just a regular retailer that you put your products on. There are nuances of how to get your products shown, how to get exposure, how to build up product ranking, and all that stuff. And we're going to be discussing about 30 seconds of Amazon, but most of the stuff we're going to be discussing is a lot of how to do it directly, right? So I wanted to kind of like take like a bird's eye view of what we're doing on Amazon. And the reason for that is because for a lot of people, this might be a great bridge to going online, but it's not the solution, right? So there are a lot of pros and cons on selling on Amazon. Number one, it's profitable, and it's profitable pretty quickly, right? If you know what you're doing, you can get your product online. You don't need the back-end infrastructure. You don't need the facilities, the shipping onesies. You don't need the customer service side as much, or you need one person for it. You kind of have everything else, like the imagery taken care of, because you have to do that anyway. You have to have the product content, because if you're selling Kohl's and selling everybody else, you kind of need that anyway. So the barrier to entry is kind of small, right? But there are a lot of cons associated with that to make that your overall online strategy. The first one is, there is a guy with a button who can turn it off overnight, and it's done, and it's finished. And tell you from experience, I deal with about 2 accounts a week that call me up and say, my account was shut down, I was doing $30 million a year, $20 million a year, $50 million a year. And it's gone like this. And it's gone for stupidity. It's gone because they made a bad buy. They didn't know where to buy the merchandise, or the quality of the product wasn't as good, or some other reason, right? So their destiny is really not in their hands. It's in some guy in Amazon's offices who decides it's over. The second, and this is kind of new, the second problem about having Amazon as a solution is that you're essentially competing with your factories. About a year ago, Amazon decided that they're going to open up the 3P channel to Chinese sellers. So all the factories from China decided to kind of jump on the bandwagon, right? Ship the goods to America, and they're done. There are many cases where you would see your factory selling the product at the price that you bought it for, and you can't do much about it. So the competition is is much tougher, because again, your barrier to entry is the same barrier to entry that they have. So it's really easy to get in the game. So it's not a long-term solution, but it's a great bridge to start going online. So just for whoever's interested, the Amazon basic strategy is prepare a product, right? Put it up on Amazon, list it, add content, add imagery, add as much information as possible, because content is currency. And online, without content, you're really not selling anything. Work on the search terms, which is getting exposure, because the majority of, about 95% of Amazon users use the search bar at the top. And once your product is shown, you'll start selling. So it's a pretty simple strategy. Now, let's take some sort of a historical content about digital and getting online, which kind of like, will kind of set the mindset of where we are today. So, in the past, and this is really important, most brands had this one-way conversation with their customers, right? You take a product, or you take a brand, take your brand message, you kind of push it forward, and you use kind of focus groups to kind of see how people react to it, but you didn't really have this two-way interaction with brands. And these three brands, one of them is very recognized, but these three brands are very popular on Facebook, on Twitter. For instance, Victoria's Secret last year was the most popular page on Facebook. They're so popular that they actually do design focus groups with their users. So if you follow them, and they'll kind of put three designs up there, or three pictures up there, and they'll ask users, which one do you love the best? And they'll decide which style they want. Elf did something similar where they kind of put shades together of makeup, and they let people decide, what if you mix this shade with that shade, how will this come up? And they kind of ran a contest socially, and they decided what shade color they want to go with. So a lot of this two-way conversation is happening with these large brands, right? And the beauty about digital and social is that you don't have to be a large brand. You just have to know how to grab a following, which is not that difficult anymore, right? And the second historical context I want to get to is something that, who was working in the 90s? I mean, I know a lot of people who were, but let's say the younger crowd. Who was working like in the late 90s? How many of you guys use the travel agent to book your flights? Pretty much all the time, right? You couldn't go, there was no like Expedia or like Orbitz or anywhere you want to go buy. I want to go to Florida, I want to go to JetBlue.com and buy it. I think it didn't exist.
You probably go to a travel agent.
You're one of the minorities. Right, but that's actually the minority. The majority of people don't use that, right? For a bunch of reasons. Number one, price, and number two, convenience, right? They want it now, they want to deal with it, it's very simple. So the market's changed. The way consumers interacted with brands changed. And we have to adjust how we interact with our customers. So a couple of other things that we saw over time is consumers' expectations, they kind of increased for a bunch of reasons, right? They can go on and they have the social megaphone and they say, I had this crappy experience with this merchant. And then you get all the haters coming on and commenting on it. And that would really, it could go viral, right? Or it could be the opposite. I had this great experience with this brand and that can go viral as well. I want to touch on that for a second. How many people here, when they book a flight, take a flight that has Wi-Fi, or look for it that it has Wi-Fi, and if it doesn't have Wi-Fi, you don't book it? No. You know why? Because it wastes my time if I go on a flight without it. And I'm expecting every flight to have Wi-Fi, even if I have to pay for it. But if not, if I have to take a 6-hour flight to LA, I'm not wasting my time 6 hours looking at the rules, right? So my expectation went up when I booked a flight. And it's not strange because most people have household. The beauty about the social megaphone, taking it to today, is that it's not that hard to be a sensation online, right? Most brand influencers only became brand influencers in the last 2 years, right? So if you have a great message and you can start getting a following through your content, you can become a social sensation in 6 months or a year. So building a brand online is also not that difficult if you're just strictly online. So it can go both ways. So one of the things you should know about today's companies, well, JetBlue, for instance. JetBlue spends 90% of their marketing on social. You don't see ads in magazines as much. You don't see any sort of like ads on websites. You only see it when they have deals and it's on Dan's Deals, it's in one place. But generally, it's all social, right? That's how they get their message out, because they built out this one-on-one relationship with their customers. And they did a great job of it. The second thing, and this is kind of getting more and more popular as the day goes on, and it never really stopped, is that when consumers are about to make a purchase, they actually ask for validity of some sort, right? So they go on and they take their network and say, well, I want to buy this stroller, right? Good, bad. And then you get comments on, this is a good product, this is a bad product, this is a good price, this is a bad price. So the ability to interact with each other and figure out this is the product for them, right, is much easier than it ever was. And this is kind of the mindset that I was talking about early on, is that consumers have to feel confident that they're buying their product. The problem is that that ability to get confidence is a lot harder than it ever was, right? So it's important to also understand that that's the consumer's expectation. Now, you also have to understand the ecosystem of going online, which is also, I guess, it's important. Let me explain. Remember in the beginning of the conversation I said, your product could be merchandised in the store in this rack or in that rack, or as they see how consumers interact in the store and they walk through this side or that side, where they can place your product so they can get as much sales through as possible. That doesn't exist online. If no one's looking for what you sell, you're not going to sell it. Simple, right? Google is the most popular website in the world. And Google is a search engine, which means that people are searching for something. If you're there to fill that need, you'll sell something. If no one is searching for what you sell, no one will ever search for what you sell. You'll never get traffic. So you kind of have to look at your product line and say, well, is my product line, primary product where people will be searching for, let's say, my brand, or the type of product that I sell? And I'm going to get to that a little later about some sort of examples in this. And then if the answer is yes, people will search for the type of product that I sell or my brand, then I'm definitely a great candidate to taking my business online, because I have at least, I went through the first, for the first checkbox to say it. The idea of having location online that doesn't exist, you have a domain, you have a name. That name means nothing, right? And the reason it means nothing is all it depends on how you market that name, right? There is no central location or great domain, and you can buy a domain for 20 grand, 50 grand, 100 grand. But if you're not going to market it, it doesn't really mean much. So this is my personal formula for being successful online. Have a good product so when the consumers are interacting with each other, and then getting your product to brand influencers, that's going to equal social influence. And then when you add positive product reviews, that's when you get revenue. So let's discuss what brand influencers are, right? So, like I said originally, brand influencers only popped up in the last few years. One very common, popular website is ShopStop, right? And almost every brand that I speak to, the first question is, do you have an in with ShopStop? Can I get my products on? And the reason for it is because it's a blog. It's really just a blog of a bunch of different styles of clothing, or apparel, or shoes, or accessories, and pretty much is the most popular website in that category, probably in the world today, right? There are a lot of YouTube brand influencers, other brand influencers, where they go to brands who appear there and say, oh, well, I have a following of 250,000 people, I have a following of 2 million people, and I can write a whole article about your product, right? And they send them the product, they get it for free, they pay a certain amount of money, and they write this whole article about them. And all of a sudden, they start getting this spike in traffic, right? So that adds validity because that audience trusts that influencer, right? So if your consumers are interacting and the brand influencers are writing about you, that creates social influence. And as long as you don't have negative reviews, so people are actually happy with your product, you'll make the sale. So this is my personal formula that I put together for being successful online. This is also my prediction, right? Any brand that doesn't communicate with their consumers will not exist in 5 years. This is a very serious, charge it is, right? So the idea of two-way communication and validating your products and getting social acceptance of your product, right, are really important because that's where consumers are shopping today. Before you go online, you have to also understand that it's a business. So I'm going to have a story behind this slide, right? Your online business is not your snapshot. I've been to over 100 meetings with wholesale owners, company owners, brand owners who believe that their volume, they're doing 100 million, or they're doing 50 million, or 20 million, or whatever number they're doing, doesn't matter, right? And they're like, well, I'm X. So what? Nobody cares, right? I can give you thousands of SKUs, and I can do this, and I can sell millions. I sell millions to this and millions to that. It doesn't really mean anything, right? And when it comes to marketing their product online, they don't want to spend more than $500 a month or $1,000 a month. And I'm like, you can't treat this as a snapshot. If you do, you won't exist. You have to treat it as a business. And if it's a real business, you set a budget, you set a goal, and you go forward. But it's got to be a real business. It can't be some sort of I need to go online, I need to check this off, I need to check this box off in my to-do list. So I'm just going to go online, but I'm going to choke it to death. It's got to be real. This is a quick and dirty view of online, of how to get of what your goal is when you build an online business, right? The first stage is getting your traffic, right? So you have all these sources where you can get your traffic. Google Pay, Bing Pay, that's kind of that's CPC world. You're paying per click for every visitor that you're getting. Affiliate programs is commission-based. SEO is search engine optimization. You should know in our industry, it's a lot of acronyms. It's SEO, SEM, CPC, CPM. There's a whole bunch of them. If you get into this game, you got to learn it. And all of these are just basic, drivers, traffic drivers. The challenge is that they get more expensive every year, right? So the same traffic you're buying from Google, this year will probably go up about 5%. And that's kind of the market. It's been like this for years. It's not changing, right? Your website has to facilitate product browsing, right? So they have to see what you sell, and you have to make transactions on it. It's the only way to do it, right? Your goal from doing this is to wow the customer. And I'm going to get into wowing the customer a little later, right? But the key to staying in business is right here, right? Your cost of consumers will go up every year. All right, so sometimes, depending on when you get those customers, sometimes you have a 1-to-1 ratio in the beginning, or a 2-to-1 ratio in the beginning, which means that if you're spending $1, you're making $1 in return, but you got to pay for the merchandise, so you're losing money. So your goal is to retain those customers, to get them to buy a second time, the third time, the fourth time, right? And this is only achieved by wowing the customer. If you don't wow the customer, you lost money on the deal, right? So if you break this up into just general, that's your marketing, that's your sales, that's your retention. Your goal here is to drive as many new consumers into your door as possible. Your goal here is to make them buy a second time. If you don't have this, or at least you haven't thought of this, go back to the drawing board. It's really important. In any business, you have different divisions that you need to make sure that they're in place in order for you to succeed, and they all have to be running cohesively, right? So in e-commerce, there's buying, there's merchandising, there's acquisitions, there's customer service, and there's logistics, right? Some of this stuff is very basic, like it's cookie cutters, it's cookie cutters, so you don't really have to worry about it. You can just hire the right person or hire the right company. And some of it isn't. So the buying is kind of done. You're already buying merchandise. You're bringing it in from wherever you're bringing it in from. And it's there, right? So you don't really have to change your buying. Your merchandising is where you get creative, right? So the key to make sure that you're successful are right here, right? This is the key to revenue. You have to have the right merchandise, you have to have the right imagery, you have to be able to have the right content to display it in the right place. You have to kind of put together, whoever bought this also bought that. So you can create this virtual walkthrough of your store where someone sees product A, and then they see product B, and then they see product C, so you can get multiple items in the cart, right? And then you gotta get customers, right? So that's customer acquisition, and then, you know, kind of like handling the issues with customers, making sure that they get their merchandise, if they're not happy with it, how do they return it, and the logistics, right? So you really have to, this is what we spoke about earlier, you have to think about, this is a constant thing, this is a weekly thing that you should be doing. How can I wow my customer? How can I see what their expectations are and wow them and do better than that, right? Because if I don't, someone else will. This is funny, right? Amazon a few years ago decided to offer free shipping, $35. Their business went up fourfold in a matter of like 2 months, right? And everybody else decided to, oh, we're going to copy this free shipping model, but it didn't really work, right? Why didn't it work? And I'm not talking about like a small shop, I'm talking like Walmart, I'm talking about like all these other large, you know, brands online. They didn't really do well with it, right? Because they didn't wow that customer the first time. And this is another thing to keep in mind, that you're always going to be challenged with this. So if you wow them before, doesn't mean you're going to win 6 months from now. You're going to have to do it again, and then you have to do it again, right? So keep that. This is a common thing that you always have to look at all the time. This is sad, but it's true. Customers will expect you to wow them. They'll expect you to beat their expectations. Because if you don't, someone else will. The first place to start, and this is not necessarily for e-commerce, is that you have to have a good product. Remember, consumers share what they buy, right? And if they share what they buy, if the quality is horrible, people will know about it. And if the quality is great, if you know how to do it, people will know about it too, right? You have to be competitively priced, because if you're not going to sell anything, right? And then you have to stand behind the product. And this is kind of important for any brand that sells directly, right? Most people can buy your product or any product at a retailer at a cheaper price. And the reason they do that is because they're not, as a wholesaler, you're not going to sacrifice your distribution to all these large retailers for your online store, which does very little, right? So they can actually buy cheaper from other places, but they choose to buy from you, particularly because you're the brand owner. You're going to stand behind it when something goes wrong. And that's kind of the #1 reason. We actually did work for NARS Cosmetics, and there's mostly male in this one. There's a couple of female, right? But mostly male. So let me just tell you what the world of NARS is, right? If you go to e.l.f., and e.l.f. is sold at drugstores, their makeup is $1 or $2 a pop, right? You go to any other brand, it's $10 for lipsticks. NARS, $24. Now, most of the research we've done with e.l.f., let's say, is a girl will come in, she'll buy the same lipstick, right? She'll buy 6 of the same shade of lipstick, right? One for the car, one for the house, one for this purse, one for that purse, one for her office, one by her friend's house, and one by her mother's house, because she always forgets it, right? With NARS, it's not the case. It's $24 a pop. She's buying one and she's carrying it everywhere she goes, right? So the challenge we had with that brand was that we couldn't discount it, right? We can't advertise 20% off today, which is a great, great sale message. Come and buy from us. We couldn't do it, right? Because Bloomingdale's would call NARS and say, I can't sell it for $24 if you're selling it for $18. So the only thing we could give away is free shipping, and big deal, free shipping. It costs 50 cents to ship, right? So our message was, buy from the brand, and this is years ago, buy from the brand, and if you feel comfortable about your purchase, feel confident that we're going to stand behind our product, right? And we did phenomenal, right? We did more sales than Bloomingdale's did on the brand. We did more sales than Nordstrom did on the brand, because we just came out with a message of confidence, right? And that was the one thing we wanted to do. And the last expectation is fast delivery, but most important, free delivery. And fast is getting up there because Amazon is offering Prime now. So if I can't get it in 3 hours, it's only going to get worse, right? The most you can do is 1 day, 2 days, but Amazon does it in 2 hours. So over time, you're going to see that a lot of other retailers are going to have to build out this infrastructure where they can ship the product and get it to you the same day. This is for any business, especially online. With your product line, you have to have 3 things in place. If you're missing one, you're not going to sell. Price, it's got to be competitively priced. It's got to be available, and you gotta have a selection, right? So if you have a product, one product, that's not enough. If you have a set of products, that's actually good, right? This is where I want to show you guys something. So we actually, this is a question I was expecting from somebody. I'm just gonna ask it and answer it, right? So I'll get somebody that comes to me and says, well, I'm children's wear, I sell, infant or let's say newborn to size 7, right? And I only have like 6 lines of brands. It's not enough of a selection, right? So there's a company that came to us about 5 years ago. It's called Raj Manufacturing. Raj Manufacturing sells swimwear, right? And they have 2 brands that they own, and they are licensee for about 4 brands that they own, but that they sell. So they put the site together, and if you're there, right, it's called Swim Spot. And all they do is sell their own brands. So if you have a license, so you have 7 different licenses in your business, and you own 2 of the brands that you sell, right? You have enough of a selection. Yes, there are a lot more brands in swimwear, right? But they only concentrate on the brands that they sell. Why? Because they do their own imagery, they do their own content because they have to, right? And they built out this, shipping infrastructure where they can ship 1 piece at a time. So, one thing I would suggest that everybody realizes, don't spend any money buying domain names. It's not worth it. Domain is only as good as the marketing behind it, or the money they spend behind it. So we have a client that sells undergarments, right? They have a great name. They really have a great name. I can't tell you what it is, but they have a great name. Tom is laughing. I work with Tom, and he's like laughing over there, right? And even with the name that they spend tons of money getting, they can't get traction. They just can't, right? The merchandise is not that great, they have their own issues, etc., 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 right? So your domain really means nothing. What really means is how you market it, right? So pick a name that's within your category, right? That kind of displays what you sell or in the category of what you sell. The next thing is something that is a mindset that's a little different than wholesale. So in my experience, wholesale has been, when I want to advertise, I want to take a page in a magazine, and I put my product there, and I let it go. I can't measure how well it's doing. That's very different with online. I can measure to the penny what I spent, what I've made, and what my future earnings will be based on the metrics that I see or based on my data. I can actually see if I spend money in this word or that word, I can see which one performs better for me, right? Everything is measurable. And the third thing is, and this is kind of a mindset, consumers are starting the journey, right? They're going on Google, because it's the most popular website in the world, and they're putting in search for what they're looking for. So if they're not looking for what I'm selling, it might not be worth it for me to advertise on those keywords. So this is, I was talking about this earlier, right? So depends on your brand, right? If your brand is well recognized, if you have a great license, you could leverage the traffic that's on that license, or that brand, right? So PRPS is a brand, right? And if I want to look for PRPS mud jeans, I'm kind of leveraging the PRPS brand because no one's going to be searching for mud jeans, or when I put mud jeans in, it's not specific to PRPS, but if someone's looking for PRPS, I'm actually just leveraging, capturing the demand for the brand. Versus, if I'm looking for plus size swimwear, I'm not really looking for a brand, right? So depending on what you sell, you can target it 2 different ways, and I would target both, right? The category, right? I'm looking for a stroller, I'm looking for plus size swimwear, I'm looking for candy, I'm looking for chairs, office chairs, I'm looking for anything, right? I'm not looking for a specific brand. Or I'm looking for PRPS. Or I'm looking for NARS. Or I'm looking for something. I have brand equity that I can leverage to capture the traffic online. So there are 2 ways that you can capture traffic. And you got to take a look at your product line and your licensee and the license that you have, and figure out, how much brand equity is in the license versus how much brand equity can I drive through the license. And then depending on the calculation, you decide which way to go. I might be going very quickly. If I am, please tell me. So, like we mentioned earlier, customer acquisition is the major part of being successful. There are a few things you can get traffic from, right? Paid search is one of them. This is like the starter kit, right? You start a paid search, which is consumers starting the journey. You go by product category or product by product attributes or brand, etc., and you can get traffic there. Social media is very different, right? Now, social media, people aren't looking for something. They're not going on Facebook and trying to look for something to buy. Advertising is that as advertisers started rolling money into social, the return wasn't there because consumers were just not interested. I'm not in the market for this, leave me alone, right? And the beauty about social media is because consumers aren't looking for something, then you kind of have to know who your customer is, right? Where do they live? What are they buying? What interests do they have? Are they male or female? What age group they're on, right? What income they're leveled on? You really have the ability of narrowing down your audience to a very specific segment using social, either Twitter or social, LinkedIn, whatever it is. You can really narrow down who you want to market to. And based on your customer profile, you can actually show your product there. But keep in mind, they're not looking for what you sell right now, right? So you have to make them want to look for what you sell. So your messaging has to address that. I'll give you an example. In our own marketing, we kind of like put the carrot in front of them. You want to find out how HSN bought, how QVC bought HSN, or like we put certain content out there and we give it to them for free, right? And as we get them interested in our content, that's when we go after for, like here's who we are, here's what we do. So once you know who your customer is, you also have to understand what the customer journey is, right? And this is common. This is it's only going to get worse. Customer puts a search in Google plus size swimwear, right? As you saw earlier. They click on the website, they go to the website. They start looking at certain products, and they leave. 2 days later, they go on Facebook, they start seeing the product that they saw on Facebook. I'm sure you guys saw this when you go online. You start seeing the same product, this company is following you. It's behavioral targeting. It's done all over the place, right? So you start seeing the product that you saw on the website. It makes you want to come back to the website. And then you leave, and then you Google the brand itself, and then you go back and you buy it, right? The challenge is that you're paying for every one of these. You pay for the first click, you pay for the second click, you pay for the third click, and you got to make profit at the end of the day. So this is where that retention program comes in, right? This is only going to get worse, right? As new abilities come out, as new apps come out, as new things come out, the level of the stops that you have or the visits that you have before the purchase will only increase, which means that you're going to have to keep paying more and more companies in order to get that sale. So building that retention is the key to success. This is kind of like, I'm going to go back and forth between the previous slide and this one. And online, because there are multiple stops, there's a concept called introducer, and there's something called the closer, right? So here you see that the original Google search is the introducer. Nobody heard of the brand Swimsuits for All before, right? So they just clicked on their ad, and that's what introduced them to the brand. Then they interacted with the retargeting ad through Facebook, and then they closed it again with another Google ad. So there are 3 different steps that are done with consumers before they buy, right? There's an introducer, there's the engagement, and then there's a closer. And because you have audience targeting, you have a whole bunch of different tools you can use with different marketing channels. You can figure out if these are returning customers or they're not returning customers. Your messaging could be different, right? So you have to look at your product line, see how consumers are buying these products, and then come in with the right messaging at each level. This is the most boring part of e-commerce. right? It's getting the goods to to consumers or getting it back from them, right? So from a wholesale perspective, this is one common thing that I hear all the time is I don't have the ability of shipping onesies. All my goods are sitting in a public warehouse. I have an order, 10 dozen, I ship it, I'm done. I don't have to worry about it, right? It's a little different with online because no one's ordering dozens, they're ordering one piece. So your infrastructure has to be able to take a pre-pack, open it, right? And kind of send the right color and size to the consumer. So ability to ship onesies, breaking up pre-packs, and you also have the ability to take returns back, which wholesalers are not used to. What I would suggest is outsourcing. There are millions of companies out there that have the infrastructure that can get you up and running pretty quickly, and that can probably do it cheaper than you would. So I would just give it to them. There's no real, I mean, unless you know what you're doing here, just give it to somebody who already knows it. Just remember one thing. You gotta wow that customer. If you don't, they'll just forget about you. So this is a story about a company called His Room. There's a company called His Room and Her Room, right? It's like an undergarment company. The men's side is a His Room, the ladies' side is Her Room. And if you ever order from them, it's a whole experience, right? The box comes a certain way, it's packaged a certain way. There's a note inside from the company itself. So when you open the box, you can actually remember the experience that you had with them. And that's kind of the stickiness that they have, right? So if every customer remembers that purchase, the next time they need something, they just go back to that company because it just stayed in their mind, right? Versus, if you look at the Amazon boxes, they will have the Amazon logo on it. Why? They did it on purpose because they want you to remember you ordered this from Amazon. Or when people throw out their boxes, everybody says, oh, it's Amazon, it's Amazon. It's very, very common that you got to get the stickiness, whatever method you're using to keep them, keep your name in their head, do it, right? Or keep your experience with them. So we went through a lot very quickly. I'm going to give you a quick summary. Selling online versus Amazon, we spoke about this. Which one is the right solution for you? It depends on where you are. If you're just starting out, I would suggest start on Amazon. It's just the beginning phases of it. You're going to learn a lot, but don't stop there. Keep going, right? You have to address this one-on-one relationship with your customers. Know who your customer is. Know what is their either biggest pain point or what makes them really happy, so you can keep them engaged with you, right? Know your merchandise, it's obvious, and know your customers' shopping habits. Figure out, you can even find it from the retailers, how many times did they go to the store before they actually buy your product, right? In marketing, you kind of have to know if your category is brand heavy or it's category. It's really category specific. Like if someone's searching for the category in their search or they're searching for certain brands in there, that will tell you how hard you have to compete and how to compete. How can you make the people feel confident that they're buying your product? And this is kind of where the social part comes in. Logistics. Again, ship onesies, break up pre-packs with return. You need to wow your customer, and that's really it. Thank you, everyone.